and for people to add to the discussion as we continue. So, yay. All right. I am so excited to be here. I think we're live now. Looks like we are. So I'm so excited to be here with Amaha from Gem City. We've been talking about doing something like this since we've met, and it's a really exciting thing because Gem City has
passion for anything the way passion. So it's a positive thing about you. You have
mute some of our other participants as they come in. So yeah, we'll just we'll have everyone stay muted for now as we get the conversation started, and then we'll open it up to the community to add in later on as we go. So as I was saying, we're really excited to have Amaha here because Gem City has been such an inspiration to the work that we've been doing at Common Share for some time. But before we dive into anything else, I want to get us started with a land acknowledgement. And so Emily has agreed to share that with us.
Hey everyone, good to see so many faces here tonight. So first, yeah, we want to acknowledge that we live on stolen Nonotuck land with the Nipmuc and the Wampanoag to the east, the Mohegan and the Pequot to the south, the Mohican to the west, and the Abenaki to the north. And we give this land acknowledgement knowing that words are not enough, and that it's the beginning of our ongoing work towards justice for everyone in our community.
Beautiful. Thank you.
I could add, I'm in Shawnee in Miami, so I'll add.
Beautiful. Thank you for
Thanks,
that.
Mama.
Yes. So thank you so much to everyone who's joining us today. I'm really pleased to have so many of our community members here to join in on this really important conversation. I met Amaha, both Emily and I met Amaha in March at Up and Coming conference in Madison. And one of the reasons why it was it really stuck with me so much and it was so impactful is because of the way that Amaha spoke about not only collective hope and how that is something that can bring us all together and move the movement forward, and is something that is extremely powerful, more powerful than any of the other things that we are fighting against or moving through to make the co-op happen. But he also made it really clear to me when he first said, I don't call it a food desert, I call it a food apartheid. And the reason for that being that it's something that was created by people. These are decisions that have been made, and it was very intentionally done by people, and therefore it can be undone by people. And really connecting that to the greater movement of liberation for all people and how institutionalized racism actually plays the biggest role in all of this, that this is just one more symptom of institutionalized racism, and to separate the two actually doesn't help anyone or make any sense at all. And that just put off a huge light bulb in my head and had me honestly come back home seeing my entire community differently. I started to see how so many of the issues that are near to my heart and are really plaguing our community are tied up in this co-op, and is something that we as a co-op and Common Share haven't really discussed prior to this. It wasn't really a part of the conversation, even though we wanted to, or we have in our mission that we want to address racism and create an anti-racist space. We weren't making the connection about how the food insecurity actually is a symptom of the institutionalized racism. And so Gem City has created a really beautiful case that really supported them with support within their community, and also funding that named racism as a public health crisis, and used data and real facts from their community to identify that and bring it to the forefront. And that really made a difference in their project and inspired us so much. So that's why we're bringing Amaha in today to tell us a little bit more about how they accomplished that, and also kind of brainstorm ideas together as a community about how we can bring this into our own community. So as we get these ideas and this story from Amaha and his community, I'd love for us to continue this conversation as our own collective as to how do we bring this into our own community and make this a part of what will move our co-op forward. So Amaha, I don't know if you want to give yourself any further introduction, tell us about yourself or anything else that you want to share in terms of that.
Oh, I'm about to just drop the mic in the Zoom. I thought we were done, but then we can talk about it. So yeah, good things, you know. I think I'll start by, you know, like I met Emily and Kinga in Wisconsin, right before the pandemic. I mean, like we were on the planes, and then we get back, and then like I know in Ohio, like I landed, and then a day later, I teach sociology. It was like school was closing. You know, it was like whoa, we were just on a plane. You know what I mean? And now, you know, so yeah, it was interesting. But you know, I've been so impressed by her leadership, organizational skills, and just been amazed. So y'all have a real gym that you're able to walk with as a collective, you know what I mean, as you're doing this work. And so I appreciate that. Anything else about me? I guess, you know, it might just come out when we're talking, you know what I mean? Like I teach sociology, and I do community-based research, and I try to walk with the community towards imagining a future that acknowledges the dignity and worth of every human being, you know, and not just human interaction, but also the policies and structures, right? And so even she mentioned racism as a public health issue, that actually came later. Like we made the case without calling it that, right? We made it, and then like this year, you know, we got it passed city and county to name it as a public health issue. And I was in a meeting last week. It was interesting because someone tried to water it down and call it equity. And like, there's a group of us like, we going racism. Like, and it like, you know, if you can't do it, that's fine. And the county felt it. And like the county and the state said, no, we're going with y'all, you know? So yeah, you know, it's a good time to unpack, heal some of these wounds that is keeping us hindered, because when we realize, I mean, we know that race is a social construct, right? That, you know, skin color by itself has no more meaning than eyes or lips or hair or anything else, right? But we've embedded the meaning of skin color with so many things that, you know, who's human, who's not human, right? Like how we interact with each other, like these scripts that we're taught about like how we move and respond and how we think about ourselves and how we think upon others, right? Upon this thing that we've made up, that I think in this hour is like how we really unpack it. And to Kinga's point, like how do we reverse some of the harms, right? That someone would say, well, oh, you know, that was a long time ago and this, that, and the other, right? But like that history, like just how like the history of our health history stays in our body. You know what I mean? Like I broke my ankle playing basketball in my sophomore year, and you know, like I still have some effects from that break. It was a bad break, and I didn't get the best treatment. So so likewise, you know, like even though part of our cities and communities we live in have tried to move on, right? We didn't address some of the underlying contexts and situations, and so that kind of has us where we are today, you know. So on that note, is something in the chat?
Yeah, we have the chat open. So
okay, no, I saw
yeah.
him point. I wasn't sure if he was pointing to the chat or what. Okay.
Yeah, and so that's a good note. So if anybody who's in the room with us, if you all have questions or thoughts as we go, you can go ahead and drop them in the chat. And we have Emily who will start to address some of those things, and then we'll bring them up into the conversation. But I think what you said, Amaha, already about you know, bringing it back to racism and not just equality or equity in general is such an important conversation. And the reason I feel that way is because that all of these things are made around racism or race in general. Like all of these different things that we're dealing with are rooted in racism. And so I know that one of the things that we talked about, because I remember asking you at Up and Coming, I was like, okay, so how did you do that? Because how can we do that? Can you tell me how to do that in my own community?
Right,
And
right.
it became this whole conversation of, okay, well, tell me more about your community. And that's, you know, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring more people into the conversation, because I, as one person, can't do this by myself. You know, I can't create the case on my own, and I can't be the only one who is understanding how all of these things are interconnected and how it actually is all one and the same. You know, I might be able to see that and I might be able to kind of explain it in my own words, but we all need to be on the same page about why is racism what is causing food insecurity. So I guess one of the first things I'd love to hear from you is, you know, I know that you talked a lot about redlining, the redlining map and opportunity mapping, and how that really informed a lot of your work. And, you know, we live in a small town in Western Massachusetts. We don't have a redlining map that I could find that's public knowledge. However, the information is there. It's, you know, it's still the same concept. It's still the same things that are being done, but it's not drawn out like that. There's no study that I've seen that's specifically, you know, making that clear. So, but I would love to hear from you as to like how you used that information to inform the case, and how do you, and we have a question already of like, what is redlining? So maybe, yeah, maybe just give us a little information about what is redlining and how did you use that to kind of inform the work that you're doing in general, and how does that tie into the greater picture?
Okay, sure. Okay, so redlining is kind of complex. I mean, redlining was kind of what legalized not only segregation, but it legalized how resources were distributed inside of communities, which ended up, you know, having communities that were highly invested in and communities that were disinvested. Which today is the linchpin. Segregation is the linchpin for all health inequalities. It all comes down to that. Like if it's exposure to toxins, I mean, we can go deep. We'll see where, you know, we go with the conversation. But so redlining was these maps that was created. So first, I think I want to go back to the race conversation a little bit more, just so we can paint the picture. So since we know race is constructed, right, that there's more genetic variation in the tiny fruit fly that you get when you leave a banana out than there is amongst all human species, right? Then we know that like race is something that was made up, it was imagined, okay? So when you're building structures or systems are comprised of an idea, an imagination, that I then back my resources to make it happen. So race is not real, but now if I put my resources towards pushing that it is real, then the paradox happens that something that does not real has real consequences, right? So you can't talk to someone, a person of color, and say like, oh, race isn't real. Are you sure about that? Because, you know, like they've experienced the brunt end of it, right? And so that's when the conversation is like, how does, you know, the paradox of race, how something is not real has real consequences. And it happens because ideology or an idea is added to resources, which creates the structure. Okay, which leads to redlining. So if I'm trying to, if I have an ideology that white is human, white is superior, and I say white, a big W, and I want to make that distinction because I could be of any color and believe in the superiority of white and get the benefits of whiteness, you know, or I could be of skin that's my color is white and not believe in the superiority of whiteness and not get the full benefits of it, right? So I want to make that distinction clear. We're talking about structures and systems and ideology and not about people, right? But like if I'm trying to make the ideology of whiteness real, one way was redlining. So what the redlining maps were they were created by banks that basically said, we're going to color code the community. In some areas, we're going to label as green. That means it is good to invest in. Some areas we'll label as blue, which is, yeah, you know, pretty good. Yellow is, you know, yeah, I guess we can do that, right? And then red to use my mom's favorite words, not no, but hell no, right? Okay. Did anyone want to take a guess how the designations were assigned? What got green, what got blue, what got yellow, and what got red? Any guesses? I'm a teacher, so I can wait.
Drop it in the chat.
Oh, it's in the chat. Okay. Well, okay, not necessarily. Not so crime. That would be that's a good comment, right? We will see later that actually the designation created the environment that increased crime, but crime wasn't the first factor. But very good comment / question, Terry. Okay.
I'll jump in. This is Jupong.
Okay.
So I, before moving to this area, lived in Providence, Rhode Island, and I bought a house and actually saw the restrictive covenant that was on this house that actually literally said no persons of African, Asian, and indigenous descent may purchase this house.
Wow.
That actually said that.
Wow.
So that was
That's heavy, right? So the restricted covenants, for those that don't know, it was like it's a byproduct of redlining, which we'll go into what that is in a second. But the restricted covenants went even further, and like they put it inside of like the deed of the house that, like, you know, till the end of time, right? These people cannot own this house, basically, is what it said, right? You know, so that was a way of just reinforcing this notion that like certain people can only live in certain communities. Okay, so
We have Zoe in the chat who said expensive white neighborhoods would be green, and then Miriam said white in general.
Yeah, it was white. It wasn't necessarily connected to income levels, but it was white. So white was labeled as green. Let me ask a question. How many on the screen, you can on the bottom, that little reactions, how many of you would identify as white that are on this call right now? Okay, one. Okay, about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Or you can put your hand up in front of the screen too.
Okay, yeah, that works too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Put your hands down. Thank you. How many of you have in your background Irish, Jewish, Polish? I'm tired. We'll go with those three: Irish, Jewish, or Polish in your background. Raise your hands again. Okay, so y'all are newly white. Okay, like you were white in the last, you know, you just got your membership card. Okay, and that shows, yeah, Italian's a good one. Yeah, and it shows how race is constructed, right? So green did not include you. Okay, there was blue and there was yellow. That included the different white that was not white, right? Because like it's famous how like the Irish became white, how the Jewish became white. You know, the whole process of like how they had to assimilate and lose their culture in order to get the white designation, because the benefits of whiteness, right? Because whiteness was seen as property back then, right? Like to be able to claim white had so much privilege and advantage built into it that people, like, you know, clamored to get that designation. That's why even to this day, when Middle Eastern comes to America, they're labeled as white, right? Because they want to get that designation. Okay, so that was the white was green, blue and yellow was what they would call at that time like immigrant communities, and then red was black. Okay, and so what they did was they created these maps that said blacks and whites cannot live together. Now keep in mind, this is only just, you know, it was just made up, right? But they said because of that, blacks need to live in one area, whites live in a different area. And then the banks, so they redlined that area. And then the bank said, we will disinvest in that area. So that's how redlining was. Like redlining was you disinvest in the area. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen because I got this map of Dayton. Can you make me, I forgot to ask you about that. I apologize.
No worries. Can you now?
Yep.
Great.
All right. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna show you my story and then we can go from there. Okay, so here's a map of Dayton. Here's the river that runs through it. And this is West Dayton. This is East Dayton. This is right on the outskirts of Dayton. This area was an enclave that was created to pool resources, white resources, but then still get the benefits of downtown. What's significant about this map that I want to show in a second is that this is like a Jewish, this is where our market is right here. It's a former Jewish community. Is that 98% of African Americans that live in Dayton are on the west side, and 94% of whites that live in Dayton are on the east side, with the Turkish community, Latino community, and African immigrant community. Okay, and this is why it matters. Okay, so W.E.B. Du Bois, he said that the color line, he said that the problem of the 21st century is going to be the color line. But what we find out is that the color line translates into an opportunity line. So when you look at the pattern of this map over here, and you overlay it over here, what do you see? So this is an opportunity map that measures conditions favorable for the attainment of a goal. White is very low, blue is very high, access to opportunity. Does anybody see a correlation between the redlining map and the opportunity map? And here's the river right here.
The white is the red on the other map.
Yes, it translates directly, right? And this is across the country. You know, every area that, like, redlining maps were a national phenomenon. Even Anchorage, Alaska, I found out a couple years ago, had redlining maps. And every area that was disinvested, which makes sense. If you disinvest in an area for 40, 50 years, you're going to have lower levels of opportunity. And opportunity looks at housing quality, education, access to healthcare, transportation, access to food, right? Okay, so Kinga had mentioned I don't use the word food desert, right? Food desert is a technical term that I want to say it's either 1 or 2 mile radius, you know, lack of access to fresh fruits and vegetables. And the area has, there's an income requirement too, right? That the area has to be of a lower income. The reason I don't use food desert is food desert implies a natural phenomenon, you know, that it's like, oh, you know, like, because now everything's a desert. You have education deserts, you have healthcare deserts, right? But they're not deserts, right? Because this was policy and structure that disinvested in the community to give us this result, right? So when we talk about it as food apartheid, we're acknowledging the human mechanism in it. And to me, that gives hope. Like I tell my students, now I'll go on a free trip in a minute, you know what I mean? So don't get me wrong, you know what I mean? But like if my president gave me some money and we're like, hey, we're gonna take some students to the Mojave Desert to make the desert an oasis using buckets, right? Even though I don't think it's gonna work, and my students probably don't agree either, I'm like, yo, we got a free trip. Let's come on, we're gonna do this experiment. You know, we're gonna take our buckets, we're gonna make it. But like, do we actually think that we're gonna make a desert into an oasis with some buckets of water? No, right? So when we say desert, it implies that it's a natural thing. Like we had a documentary made about Dayton recently, and in it, it was showing our conditions, and we so normalize ourselves to the conditions that we just think, oh, that's just the way it is. You know what I mean? Yeah, we can go 5 miles from here, and there's like 3 major grocery stores on one intersection. You know what I mean? But in Dayton, this whole west side, 40,000 residents, no grocery store, right? And so that was the genesis for the Gem City Market, because, you know, I'd already been studying the redlining map. And then when this opportunity map came out by public health, right? So it wasn't, you know, Amaha in the lab making a map, you know what I mean? This was like a county map. You know what I mean? So I'm using their data, right? And we talked to the community and we're like, yo, look at this distinction and look at why this distinction, right? Because of former public policy that was never addressed. And then we said, what we're gonna do about it. And like, I can show you stuff later. I'll show now some stuff, why it matters, but I don't want to lose track. This isn't a redlining conversation, right? So, so we called people together and we told them about these maps. It wasn't that it was new knowledge, but it confirmed what they already knew. And then we broke up the room at the end and said, okay, so what are we gonna do about it? So we used some of the five measures that you see in this corner. And then a group in the corner, about 3 or 4 came together and they're like, what if we opened up a grocery store? And we're like, yeah, let's open up a grocery store. Okay, how much grocery store opening experience do we have amongst us? 0. I can eat, you know what I mean? But other than eating, you know what I mean? Like we had none, right? But, you know, we had the audacity to think that we could do it, right? And so one of the first steps we did was we gathered people together. We had a conversation that if it's something that would be interested, and like we started building up our base, right? We created a broad-based coalition, and then we put out a survey to ask the community if it's something that they would be interested in, right? And so when they said yes, then we went full steam ahead, and we actually went underground. Like right when like we got to go ahead from the community, we went silent for like 1.5 years or so, and everybody probably thought we dropped off, but we went and did deep work. That's how we linked up with FCI, the Food Co-op Initiative, and like that's when we started learning and like contacting people and like really okay, we need to learn how to do this, right? And then we came up again about a 1.5 years later with the GMC market. One thing else we did in the process, what I think is important, is that the community named the market. You know, like we put it out there about a month and a half, and you know, we came back with different names and we put stuff together and we put it back out to the community. But it's so important to have participation and for the community to see what they can do. Because part of the hope, like we said earlier, is knowing that I can change the policy and structures, you know, that's human thing. That's another thing, is to see my voice in the work. So now I have a shared identity with the work. And it's not, oh, these people over there are doing this thing, and then yeah, maybe I'll go shop there or whatever. But no, what are we doing? What are, you know, we all said we are the ones we're waiting for, and how the market is more than a market, but a movement, right? And I know Kinga, I'm random, so go ahead. What else did you want for that first question? I forget.
No, this is also great. It's because I think that this is the part that, you know, we've been missing in a lot of ways, is tying the situation that we're all experiencing, and we know that's happening in Amherst, to the facts and the history of it all. And so, like I said, I had trouble finding a redlining map for our community. But one of the things that we've been looking at is the zoning laws, and how does that play into everything? Because the zoning laws for us are very specific, and we also have a very small town, so it's a different story than yours, where you're coming from a big city. You know, there's a lot of, like you even mentioned that for miles there isn't a grocery store. Our situation is a little bit different in the sense that there are grocery stores that are down the street, but they're in a different town, and they're not accessible to everybody, and they're also like not accessible in location, but also in terms of financially. And so, you know, one of the things, and so the reason why I wanted to bring up the redlining maps and have you kind of talk about that is to show how you used that evidence and the, you know, the being able to clearly see what is happening to draw in the story. So I guess I also want to hear about, you know, how did you then apply this map into starting to create the case, and like what are some of the things that really moved the whole project forward in that way?
Okay, sure. Okay, so let's take a look at this map, this real quick, just so this is looking at life expectancy, right? So it's looking at health in relation to opportunity. Okay, so you see that in one city, right? And our city is, I mean, like we got 120,000 residents or so, but like, you know, our borders ain't like, it ain't a big city at all, right? But within a city, you have in the low areas, you have 69 years, and in the higher areas, 75 years, right? So you have a 6-year difference in life expectancy in a mid-sized town, right? Opportunity for heart disease, 278 to 198, right? So you see this pattern, and like I'm not gonna geek out too much. And then cancer, right? 268 to 213. Now this one always interested me too, right? When you look at life insurance, right? So you go 19.2, it rises, it doesn't keep the same pattern. Like everybody else had the step down pattern, and then it gets low again. Does anybody know why that's the case? Why in the middle does it go up? It's because of access to healthcare. So like here you get it's called the cliff, right? Where if you make $1 over, you lose all your benefits. So this is the cliff group, right? They don't make enough to get the health insurance, but they lost it right here. So this is the group that's stuck in the middle because of the cliff, right? And so what we did was we compiled all the data we could find to make the case that like the area that's been disinvested needed a grocery store and the health benefits that would come from it. So we use data talking about like how having access to food increases life expectancy, and like we pulled in all this data to make the case. And then we started talking to the hospitals in the area, right? And we ended up getting like there's 2 major hospital networks in our city, and we got both of them on board, right? And one thing I forgot to mention about the market, maybe we'll talk about that later, is that we're not just a grocery store. We're also going to have a community kitchen, what else? A health clinic and a teaching room, because the hospital down the street from us was closed down too, in a redlining area, right? So it's like so we're doing it all inside the market to try to meet the needs of the community. And so part of what enabled us to do this, what I think is like a crucial thing, is that you build a broad-based coalition, right? So early on, we had people from city, county, we had all people from quote unquote hood. We had everybody, you know what I mean? That like on our initial committee, so that we had everybody's voice at the table. And then as we started organizing more, they could go to their networks to help move whatever needed to be moved for everything to work. So I'm gonna take it off this now.
So we have a question in the
Okay.
chat here that says, did you say your health department published this data? Is this common data for towns and cities to collect?
Yes and no. Okay, so the creators of this type of map is the Kirwan Institute out of Ohio State, which is like a hardcore social justice like institute. Maps similar to this is fairly common now. Some kind of map measuring opportunity is pretty common now, or access to opportunity, but it's not like a standard, I would say, per se, but it is pretty common. One thing that we did is that we built relationships with local, like I think what you gotta do is like, who are your assets and key players in your community? Right. So like, is there a college nearby? Right. Like all the different things. So like to leverage, their skill sets, capacity, because like, you got to do a performa and all these things. Right. So like, how do you build the case using the assets and leverage what is there? So like, I think like the team that you create is super important for your ability to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we have 5 major universities in our area.
Oh, wow.
So that's a huge part of our community.
Yeah.
And so I guess what are some of the biggest needle movers that you feel like made a big impact? Like what are some of the relationships maybe that you built, or some of the key players that you feel like really moved the whole project forward in that sense?
Our biggest, which is kind of one of the hardest to get, was we were kind of like, struggling along, and then Leela joined the project. So Leela was, you know, she didn't like to say our first general manager, but she kind of was our first general manager for real. And she came involved and got involved in the project. And then she went and applied for a fellowship. And that fellowship, her project was going to be the food co-op. So when she got the fellowship, then it was like, well, I just got this money. Can we use this money to build a co-op? We're like, yep, you're it. So it's like, so we had somebody that could walk it out day by day, you know, because I can't stress how important that is as you grow, to be able to get some seed money, to like be able to hire, like if it's a part-time or full-time person, to like walk it out day by day. Because when I look at, you know, the length of time to open up grocery stores, it makes a huge difference having somebody that can, you know, attend all the meetings, that can, you know, move the rock and keep it going forward. Building out the broad coalition, I think, was a huge part of it. Like if we just kept it in a small group of people, wouldn't have worked. We had like 19, 20 people on the steering committee. You know, I think building the health case and talking to the residents, right? Like being participatory matters, and really like not trying to force something, but like really moving off the demand of what it is. Like what size store do you need? What needs to be sold in the store? What are people looking for, right? And that's all part of the collective hope, because collective hope is when you identify as a community what is the area you want to work, live, and play in, and you leverage your resources towards making it happen, right? And that's a shared process, right? And it takes some time. And the good thing about it is that like as you're building your shared vision, you're building deeper relationships, right? Because you want to be able to taste, see, smell the vision, so that when people try to come and try to knock you off or whatever, right? It's like your strength in the collective vision, which enables you to push through, right? Because the hope comes from knowing that we can change, that we can impact our community. I don't have to accept, you know what I mean? Like you know, what we normalize what is not normal, right? I have to accept that, you know what I mean? And then, you know, being able to build that together is the strength to overcome. That's why I think there's so much power in collective hope. But yeah, what else did I write down? Anything else? And I think connecting the dots, right? Like what data is already out there, you know? And I don't know if you've picked a location yet or a general place, but I think that matters too, as far as being able to talk to funders and the hospital and stuff. You know, they have a general idea. You don't need to know the exact street, but if you know the general area, and for real, and you know this, you know, I'm just talking off the top of my head. Like you can just, you know, we'll be done in an hour or whatever. And you can, you know, but I would probably place it in an area that is strategic, like as far as like the what are like the underlying needs, you know, because like if you're going to build a health case, you got to be in an area where you can actually build a strong health case, you know. And you know, I don't know Amherst, and I don't know like where that would be, or if that would even, you know, if Amherst doesn't fully, I don't know all of that, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like,
yeah, and that's part of the complication of our area is that, and that's why I brought up the zoning maps, because it's very specifically done in a way that's restricted, and there's not a lot of area for business. And so there's, you know, we're starting to look at that part and being able to identify that the way that the zoning maps are actually created are part of what is holding that restriction, you know, that there are areas that are complete dead zones for commercial businesses to be able to be established, and there's not access for people to be able to get to the grocery stores the way they need to.
gotcha.
So yeah,
Access is crucial, right? And so so part of our case was it takes 2 buses to get to a grocery store right now, you know, and so you're looking at an hour and a half bus ride, right, to get groceries. And you know, if it's one person buying groceries for themselves, then you know that's one thing. So 3 hours there and back, right? But if you got a larger family, you know, are you taking multiple trips per week? Are you taking more people with you on the bus, right? All of these things. And so when you start hearing how people have to navigate and make decisions, and right, you know, sometimes I'm lazy, you know what I mean? Like I be doing too much, so I get tired, you know what I mean? So it's like sometimes it's easier for me to just go to the Family Dollar down the street and get something, you know what I mean? Now, I don't do that, but I know a lot of people that do, you know what I mean? And so that's a decision people are having to make. Like a lot of people in Dayton are eating out of Family Dollars and Dollar General. You know, so it's like if you're eating that food once in a while, no big deal. But if that is your staple, you know what I mean, then like all the health consequences that come from that, how it impacts youth development in school when that's what they're going to school on, you know. And so it's really drilling down to like how crucial access to fresh fruits and vegetables is to the survival of the community. And one thing that I will encourage you with is that food is the easiest thing to organize a community around. You know what I mean? You might not agree about a whole bunch of stuff, you know what I mean? But you start talking about like keeping access from kids from food. Oh no, you know, you get to, you know, like people will rally around that. You know, like that's one of the easiest ways to organize and mobilize a community, you know, is food.
Yeah. And we have a lot of, I saw somebody say this, Cumbies in the neighborhood. It's a local grocery store. I'm talking about a gas station that has, you know, just little food here or there that you can get. And those are all over in those areas that have no grocery stores. So that's where a lot of people go to get their food.
Yeah. And my guess is they're higher priced, right? Because it costs more to get food in a food desert or you know, food apartheid area. You know, bananas cost $1 and all these things. And so you pay more for less nutrition. And that's what creates, you know, I mean, like we really broke it down to like, you know, like what are the health outcomes, you know what I mean, as far as obesity, hypertension, exposure to toxins, because red line areas have, you know, higher exposure to toxins, asthma, because the maps aren't just about opportunity, but it's also about risk. So like what you do is that you pull with things that are not wanted in the community in the area that's quote unquote low opportunity, least desirable, but everybody benefits. You know, everybody's flushing their toilet, everybody's using this, that, and other, but it's like it's certain communities that are having the brunt effect of where the trash ends up, right? Where the water treatment plant ends up. It's always in areas that are redlined, you know?
Yeah. So I wanna give people an opportunity to make comments and or ask questions specifically. But before we do that, I just want to ask you: is there anything that you feel like you would recommend that we avoid, or mistakes that you've seen made, or that you all made yourselves that you think that we could avoid? And you know, mistakes that you want to share with us, because I know that's a big part, is what do we not do?
Yeah.
Or what is not good for us to spend our time and energy looking at.
That's real. And that's why I appreciate co-ops so much, because co-ops are about cooperating between co-ops, right? So like sharing that knowledge and like we learn from other co-ops, right? I think some of the biggest mistakes that I've seen done is to pick a location without doing like real market research on the location that you pick. Like some people say like, oh, you know what I mean? Like that would be a perfect building for a grocery store, right? Without looking at like the density and the neighborhood around it, like all the other things that are important to have to be able to sustain a co-op. So I've seen co-ops fail by just picking a location and like, you know, field of dreams, build it and they will come. And you know, it doesn't fully work because you know you just picked it out of willy-nilly. And I would say not listening to the community you serve. So like once you identify the area, then you identify like who's the grocery store actually for, right? And getting them involved, centering around them and their experiences, using their experiences in marketing material, using their experiences as far as like how you make your messaging, you know? So I think those are probably the two biggest ones that pop up for me right away. And I think you gotta think through your structure, right? Like how are you how are you structuring the market? Like how are you organizing around it? I think is another like huge, opportunity for either way, but yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm seeing lots of things come through the comments and I can't quite keep up with them all. So, and we have people on the call right now from all over the place. We have people coming in from other co-ops. We have people we have some youth, we have some community members and people who are doing different projects and all throughout our community, people who are living in Amherst or working in Amherst. So there's a very diverse group of people on the call right now, especially because we wanted to open it up to everyone because this information can be helpful to anyone who wants to make these kind of impacts in their community.
Yeah, I appreciate
But yeah, at this point, I want to open it up to, shout out to Dorchester Food Co-op. Hey. And so, yeah, I want to open it up to anybody who's in the community right now and on the call. If you all have any specific questions for Amaha or things that you're thinking about in our community that you're wanting to figure out, how do we apply this to our community, and think, any thoughts or questions that will help us take all this information and move forward to the next steps of applying this for ourselves and helping us gather this information to move forward with our own project. Now would be the time. You can either raise your hand. I see actually already a hand raised. So if you know how to raise your hand on the Zoom, I don't remember the keys, but you can go into the participants and go next to your name and click to raise your hand. Or you can go ahead and drop something into the chat so that we know that you have
had her hand raised.
Okay, so I see a hand. Oh, I see a hand on the screen. Jenny, I see you. I see DW's hand here in the participants. I'm gonna I saw DW's hand first, so I'm gonna invite you, DW, to unmute and ask your question, and then Jenny, whatever you have next, I'll have you go next.
Peace, Amaha. Thank you for coming on.
Hey, no
Just want to say super shout out for supporting the community here. I wanted to ask specifically about when we talk about participation and the people needed in order for it to move. Like, who are those people? So not just saying, we know we have different people in the community that we want to reach out to, but are there specific people that may have specific experience in areas that you're like, you want to have a person who has this experience here, and if you could find that in this community, then do that. So like, if there's a list of 10, because there's maybe, I don't know how many people in the room, say there's 15 people in this room right now. So that tells me that there's 15 people that are activated, who are already activated, who are already ready to be like, all right, we're going to do something here. And so how do we sift through these people and say, okay, if this is your talent, this is what you can contribute to, like data research, or, you know what I'm saying? So being able to name those people that were really important to building the case that you have, what position did they take on? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah, no, perfectly. I think it's a good question, right? I think, I'm big on asset-based community development, just in general, which is like how you leverage the gifts and talents, in the community. So like, I might start with within your group, identify like what are the gifts and talents already in the room, and then how to organize those towards, if some people are more data inclined, if some people have, connection with city or with county, or, business development, because at some point you're going to need to build a pro forma, and that's why I think colleges are a great resource. Like even grant writing, like contact the colleges and see if their class will take your project on for a grant writing or something. There's different ways to leverage resources, but I would say, eventually you'll probably want some type of grant writer. Now, like we didn't really, we did some grants, right? But a lot of our project was more talking to the hospitals, local people, and some philanthropy. you know, like talking to different parts of the community. But I think that is building that case, right? And so you got to kind of identify the area, build a case around the idea, you know, who's not at the table that needs to be at the table, you know, and, you know, don't do things for, do things with, you know, like, you know, you want to build power with, right? You want to work with, you know, and you want to get their voice, right? Because it's like, oftentimes, I know in Dayton, you know, oftentimes decision makers have no clue what's actually happening on the ground. They're making policy, right? But the people that have the most experience are those that are at the brunt end of the policies that are being created, right? So center around their voice and allow their voice to be heard, you know what I mean, to then transform, you know, policy, leverage that for resources, and really, you know, put them at the center of the change, whatever, you know, building the market, you know. So, but I think like, it's almost like a chicken and the egg to a certain extent. You gotta kind of identify some things, even if it's not there to the end of all time, but like, okay, like this is where we're thinking right now. Like, cause we picked a couple different areas, cause like our first choice was, there was a Kroger's that had been closed down like 10 years ago. Immediately we were like, okay, we're gonna get this Kroger's, we'll be done in 2 weeks. And we'll, you know, like, and then we found out, well, that area has been such disinvested that like just low density. Now it actually turns out that like they're starting development. So it would have worked if we waited a couple of years, but like at the time it was like, you know, there wasn't the density to do it. So then like it took like 3 or 4 locations for us to finally find one that worked for us. And it's not as deep in the food desert that we wanted to, but it was the one that we were able to get the store up, and then we're going to build satellites. We're already working now on how like push deeper into the food desert, food apartheid area now.
Yes, because this is just the beginning, right? And that's the part that I think is so important to remember, is whatever steps we're making are just the first steps, and there's always more planning that we can do in the future, but we have the first step of opening up some doors, right?
I say.
Jenny, you had some comments or questions?
Yes, hi, Amaha. I'm from the Dorchester Co-op, and if you know Dorchester, I mean, the redlining discussion was very interesting because Dorchester had a tremendous history with redlining, and the side was white and the west side was black. And that's a long story, but I'm actually very curious about the funding of your project. You know, traditional food co-op experts will all tell you that, you know, you do this member loan campaign from your community for most of that money. And in a low-income community, that's challenging. And so I'm just wondering what your experience was and where you got most of that money to build the project, because it's expensive to build, as we're finding out, it's very expensive to build a grocery store.
Yeah, you know, counting on the size, this another, you know, it can definitely be expensive. We never have done a loan membership campaign. We've talked about it, and we're thinking about actually doing it now, like almost to say that like, so when you first open, you want to have, you know, extra liquidity, you know, so we're thinking about doing something now. But we didn't at first. And so when the experts are talking about that, part of that is because they're using the old model of like how co-op form, opening co-ops out of like a necessity and not a want it's a different bird, and it's a different conversation that like that's happening right now. And so it changes the dynamics. We got our first grant was $50,000, and that came from the Rotary Club, and they like did they went deep into our Kool-Aid, you know, and once they said we were okay, it opened up the door for us to get more, because like it was their biggest grant they ever did. And it was like, okay, so if you all passed their test, you know what I mean? The next one we did was, you know, a Medicare, Medicaid provider called CareSource. They were our next grantee. And then after that, we had a hospital and then another hospital. And at the same time, we didn't do a loan membership campaign, but we did do philanthropy, right? So we went to the philanthropy community. We created a fundraising committee, right? And kind of to DW's question, like finding somebody who has access to those realms and get them, see if you can get somebody involved to help you move in those circles. So one thing that we said, kind of on a side note, but like, to me, the success wasn't going to be opening up a grocery store. My success was going to be if the process that we got to the grocery store changed the way things were done in our community, you know. And so throughout the whole process, we tried to do, we didn't go the normal way. And I'm saying all that to say, so part of it was how to get people in the community more access to these philanthropists, right? And like, I got in some rooms that I didn't know existed. You know what I mean? I've been community organizing for a long time, you know? So it just shows like there's levels to this, right? And there's different spaces and so how do you tap in and get everybody engaged and involved in a project for the community? That's why it all comes down to the case that you build. You know what I mean? And looking at like, I don't know if yours is health or not, right? But looking at like, for a red line area, like there's a blueprint, I think, that's emerging. For an area that's not red line, is using nuances, like you said, the zoning, or like looking at what are the conditions in your area, and then building a case around those conditions as they exist.
Yes, absolutely. I'm so excited to hear that, because that's exactly why I wanted to bring you in, because I think that there's a lot for us to be looking at in terms of the history of Amherst. How did it come up to be the way that it is? What are the details and the facts that we know? What is the facts? Like, what is it that's right there in front of us that we just need to name and identify? And so, you know, we have folks on the call from Defund 413 Amherst, which is a group that's uprising right now. I mean, these are our member owners now, because we've got them part of our community as well. But, you know, we've partnered with them in a lot of different ways, or been in communication with them rather for some time now, because the movement is so much connected. And there's a lot of conversation right now in terms of the way the town is set up, not only with the region and with the zones and things like that, but in development, but also in terms of how decisions are being made and how our town council is being run, or the fact that our town is managed by a town manager that's hired by the town council. Like, all of these nuanced details that really tell the story of Amherst and what's happening here.
Right.
So,
you know, within that, I would also say, what are the things that are on the surface that you see that are just assumed to be normal, that actually are not normal or healthy? You know what I mean? Because like sometimes, you know, like, you know, I always tell my students, you know, that first time when you spend the night at somebody else's house, you think everything you did at your house was the way everybody around the globe did it. And so you go spend the night somewhere else. You come home like, mommy, daddy, they do things, you know what I mean? So like we normalize whatever around us, and maybe that's actually not healthy. Maybe it's not normal per se, you know what I mean? But we just accept it, right? And so like, I think that's another area to look at when you're organizing around, you know?
So we've kind of run out of time. We're a little bit over what we had scheduled together, but there's one more question here that I think is worth bringing up, which is generally, how do you identify that people's voices are being heard, or that people know what's happening with the co-op? Like, how did you feel? What were some signs that showed you that the community was listening and that you were reaching the community and that they felt like they were invested and involved?
I think it takes time, and a nuance to that question is I think we're still trying to get more of the community involved, you know, because, you know, you can make things open, like we held meetings in different places, like when our architecture came, we had the architect go all different parts of the community and have open time where people could add their ideas. And some of our best ideas came from community members. You know, we're going to have people walk to the store with their urine before we realize you need to have a bathroom by the health clinic, right? So it's like, you know, yeah, collective intelligence is important, right? But like, I think like when you know that now almost everywhere I go, someone's going to ask me questions about the market, or, hey, I see the bricks are going up, or, you know what I mean? Or even before, like, hey, you know, like when people are talking about it often, that was one way that we knew. And now people are even building off of that, like what else can we do? You know what I mean? Like that's what, once you start getting people with hope, and like, you know, the market is nothing compared to what we can do as a community together, right? And so I think it's ensuring you have voice at the table, and you got to be intentional. You know what I mean? So it's like, go out to the community. Like if you see people not represented at the table, go to them. You know what I mean? Invite them. You know what I mean? Like I'm also big on like not asking people to my quote unquote table, or you know what I mean, but going to their table. You know what I mean? Like look, anybody in the community that's doing work for the community, look, I'm in. You know what I mean? Like I might not know you, I might not ever know you, but trust me, you know what I mean? It's like, this is a collective work effort, you know what I mean, to transform our community. So like I'm down for real.
I love that. One of the questions that I started to, or subjects that I started to really talk about with the our board as soon as we came back from Up and Coming is, what are we doing right now? How are we impacting our community right now? If this were to never open as a store, what did we do in all of the years of our organizing? You know, and then when the store does open, because that's the vision that I see, and that's what I truly believe will happen. What is all of the work we've done so far? If we have doors open to a store and we're not gathered as a community, we don't believe in this as a community project, then it's just going to be another place where we go and we buy things and then we leave, you know, and it's not really going to make the impact that is what a co-op is all about. And so, yeah, that's something that I've been carrying a lot into our community now, and really asking us, what are we actually doing here as a community? What does this project mean besides it being a place for us to buy groceries?
And you know, like if I was to say one more thing that was important, I think that was it, right? And it kind of goes to your brand, right? Like what are y'all really about? You know what I mean? Like, because you can have all kind of events. I mean, before we had a location, you know, we're doing cornhole events. We're doing all kind of events in the community. And the other thing was that like, and this could be a little bit risky, but like, I'm just a real believer in emergence. So like, you know, if people wanted to host an event for us, like we let them do it. You know what I mean? Like, you want to create a cornhole team, do it. You know what I mean? Like, cause that was a community taking ownership. Like, yeah, this is our market. It's not like you got beg and plead to you know what I mean? No, it's our market. We're co-creating this thing together, right? So building that sense of that shared identity. And I think also, like, and I don't know Amherst enough to be able to fully say if this works for you guys or not, but we situate the market inside of a movement, you know, that like this is one piece of a larger thing, you know, that it's a watering hole, right? So like when you support the market, you are supporting this larger vision of community transformation, right? And so like, that's why we say that's more than a market, but a movement, you know? And so it's like, how do you situate the market as a way to build relationships across difference, we're building relationships east and west in our community. You know what I mean? Like, how are you building relationships, right? And then like, how are you supporting other work, right? And how are you building alliances? And how are you building, collaboration with organizations that have like similar interests, right? Like, how do you build that and show how the market can be like, support this larger work that's happening and be situated inside of it, you know? And I think that's real big, is that like we're building an ecosystem, and the market is part of the ecosystem. It's one of the highlights. We talk about Star Trek and like, you know, the ship, you know what I mean? But like we're trying to build an ecosystem, because for some that you would think you want to build a market first, but you actually got to look past the market in order to build the market, you know, like, and it's counterintuitive, you know what I mean? But like what is the change you're trying to see, and how does the market fit inside that change? But if you focus just on the market, it's almost like, you know, like if you aim for the stars, you hit the moon, or whatever it is, you know what I mean? Like you gotta look past it, you know what I mean? And get it. And I know it's counterintuitive, but
Yes, no, I thank you for all of that. You said all the things that I was hoping that you'd say tonight, because you're just so brilliant in everything that you say and your whole perspective. And it totally opened my eyes and turned me on to a different way of looking at the co-op that I really wanted to bring into our community. And I've been having this conversation of what is it that we're doing overall and how is this connected to the greater movement that's happening in Amherst, because there is a lot of things happening in Amherst right now. And, you know, to give more shout outs, we have, like I said, folks from Defund 413 Amherst on the call. We have folks from the Amherst Mobile Market on the call. We have folks who are, you know, DW is part of Counterculture Educator. We have the, you know, Dorchester folks on the call. We have all kind people coming from all, and we have youth of BLM youth on the call. I mean, we have people coming from all over the community, and we've been really working on building these relationships so that we can help make it clear that the co-op is not, it's not just about a new grocery store. It's really about an overall movement, and how are we looking at the overall culture that's happening in Amherst, and where is the dysfunction, and how is that tied back to our mission. And so I thank you so much for all of your words today, all of your energy. I hope that everybody who is in the room with us and who's watching live on Facebook can see exactly what it was that drew me in to bring Amaha to speak to us, because I really think that he's on to something huge here that we can all really benefit from, and we can all really tap into to make massive action and change in our own communities. And I'm really excited that so many people tuned in to have this conversation. I think that there's future conversations that could be had that would propel us forward even more. So if we're interested in following up with another conversation, I'd love for our community to just let us know that. There's so many talented people who joined us today from all walks of our community, and I want to invite you to think about, you know, what role is calling to you in all of this? What is it that we spoke about today that feels like, oh yeah, that's me. I have that talent. I have that understanding. I can offer that. I can make that connection. I can pull that data. I can research that and bring that together. And all of these pieces, we need to come together as a whole community, because that's what this is all about. It's cannot be done with one person. It cannot be done with a small group of people. It's a community effort. And so that's all I have to say. I'd love to hear from our community as we continue as to where you feel like you fit into this. And I'd love to have more conversations like this, not just with Amaha. Of course, Amaha, I want to have you come back and have all the conversations.
Yeah, I know.
And I want to continue. I think that this in general is so powerful. I love that Dorchester Food Co-op that we have 2 people that came on that I can identify that came on, and 3 people that came on and are coming from Dorchester Food Co-op. And I think that's so beautiful that we have organizers from 3 different co-ops on this call talking about this one subject in ways that we can apply this to our own communities. And this is what cooperative organizing is all about. And it really excites me. It excites me. And I'm super turned on to like go and move forth with the movement. And yeah, that's all I have for today.
I have a question, Kinga, if I can. I dropped off the call because, you know, we're in sort of rural Amherst and our Wi-Fi sometimes funks out. And so I don't know if this was addressed, but if there's time, I would love to hear your thoughts, Amaha, on, you know, you are working in an area that's more urban, and Amherst is, it's like not exactly rural, you know, the community is, it's a weird, I don't know how to describe it. All around us is very rural, and then the town of Amherst is it's one of the 5 colleges. We have 3 colleges in this town that's, you know, fairly small. So there's this weird kind of concentration of college, university, heady types, and that population that kind of fluctuates throughout the year, where like students are often not very present in the summer, and then there's this flood of students in the fall, so there's that whole thing going on. And then we have the businesses in the town that have to navigate that are like, oh my God, we get a lot of business when the students are around, and then summer is dead, and then we have people living in the, so I'm just trying to paint a little picture of the kind of challenges that we face as a small rural-ish college town, and how like any wisdom you have to share about how to use how to apply your wisdom to our particular circumstance.
Yeah, I think I'm real big on being demand driven, right? And so like what does the community want and need, and I think also like what are the benefits of a co-op, right? So like what are the benefits of having a space that is participatory, democratic, right? The community owns it, so I think it's looking at like what are the nuances inside the community that like why build the grocery store, right? You know what I mean? Like what is your why, I guess would be the question to really ponder, you know what I mean? To then situate, because stores can have different sizes, they can look different, they can function different, you know what I mean? It's not cookie cutter, right? So like what is that niche that you can fill in the community? And that is one thing that like we talk about a lot, and it wanes, and but it's coming up more now, is mission versus margin, so like we have aspirations to do even more at the grocery store, but it's like with being able to make margin, we can't do everything right now, we gotta like so it's that mission versus margin conversation. And so I guess I'm trying to say that to say that like what is the need, the interest in the community, what can people rally around, like, and I think your big thing is even for growing membership is tap into all those networks that Kinga created, right? So like the more collaboration that can come from all those networks and be seen as an ecosystem, an alternative space, then it's like, okay, the alternative space need a grocery store, I mean, just like other movements or whatever, like have a space where they congregate or whatever, you know what I mean? And the size can grow. It doesn't have to be, super big at first. I think you just make everything based upon, your needs, limitations, and teasing it out, you know what I mean? And it's a slow process, but I think that's where you get the community involved, right? Like our first thing we put out to the community was, do y'all want this thing? We have an idea, but is it our idea we're trying to push on y'all, or is that something that you want? And we had 1,000 people in like a month say that, oh yeah, we want this. And then one of our questions was, we asked, do you want it? And the other one was, will you actually shop there? You know what I mean? Like, don't get Pookie in them that, but so yeah, we did both, right? And they said that they wanted it. And that's what, so we felt we had a mandate then from the community to move forward. You know what I mean? So I don't know if that answered your question at all or not, but yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, there's so many questions that we can ponder right now, because there's so many aspects to building the co-op. And so one of our big interests right now is building this case, because we can see just how much it would really drive support, not only from the community, to be able to identify what is the problem that's really happening and how do we see ourselves being able to address that, but also for funding and for support from other, larger organizations and health departments and things like that in our area. So like I said, I really hope that we can all come together to to bring our individual parts, like Amaha said earlier in the evening, tapping into our individual talents, our superpowers, to bring that in so that we can do this as a collective. And then as we are moving forward with building the case, I think it would be beautiful if we could bring in another conversation like this and then start to identify, okay, you know, what are the next steps with this case, or what are some roadblocks that we're facing that we need to work through. So I want to thank everybody who showed up today and who participated and who gave their time. I want to thank you for your time. Want to respect everybody's time tonight and start to close out, and just give so much gratitude to you, Amaha, not only for the work that you're just doing in general and the way that you've just inspired me and sparked so much in me, but especially for coming tonight and spending your time with us. I know you had a long day of teaching and meetings and things like that. So I really appreciate your energy that you're giving to the movement overall in all the areas, your own home and ours.
You know, likewise, you know, it's strength and the strength, you know, we're all in this together, and I appreciate you, you know, inviting me and opening up the space. And yeah, I mean, yeah, I know I'll always come back and chop it up or whatever, you know, so yeah, it's all good. So yeah, so thank you, you know what I mean? And just be encouraged. Just know we are the ones for real that we waiting for, you know?
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So, and this is